Hey gang, it's me, Dr. Steve, your Patriot Professor. Today I'm away from the studio. I'm actually in front of a room full of patriots pouring into people who are ready to fight for faith, family, and freedom in their own communities. It's one of my favorite things I love to do, but I cannot let the day go by without walking with you too. So ahead of time, I sat down and recorded this conversation just for moments like this. I'd love for you to share one concrete thing that you're doing to push back and build something beautiful right where you are. This is part of a movement, and it needs your voice in it. Hey gang, it's me, Dr. Steve, here for one of our Turley walks on my back porch. And I wanted to introduce all of you to my latest book project that I've been working on called The Civcosm, The End of the International Order and the Rise of a Civilizational Cosmocracy. And what this book does is it brings together the three major trends, the three major dynamic forces shaping our world today: theopolitics, technopolitics, and astropolitics. And it brings them together into a single integrated model I'm calling a civcosm, or a civilizational cosmocracy. And today I want to introduce you to this trend known as theopolitics, because this is absolutely key to understanding the world that's rising all around us. So let me start with a definition, because it'll be the thread running through every talk in this series. Theopolitics is a study of how theological worldviews, foundational religious cosmovisions, become the operating system of civilizational power. So every great civilization in human history has encoded a sacred answer to the question of world order. And yet, the story the modern Western world has been telling itself for about, 200 years, completely tried to contradict that. And the story went something like, as societies modernize, as they industrialize, as they educate their populations and raise living standards, religion inevitably erodes. It moves from the public square to the private conscience. And eventually, in the fullness of progress, it fades away almost entirely. So that was what's known as the secularization thesis. It was a confident prediction of sociology, of political scientists, of virtually the entire Western intellectual establishment. That thesis is now empirically falsified, not as an academic controversy, but as arithmetic. The world is not converging around liberal values. In fact, it's moving decisively away from them. And the key indicator of that is demographics. If you understand demographics, you will understand the kind of world that will be populated over the next generation or two. The world that's rising as we speak is not a redistribution of power among secular states. It is a radically religious world. It's a competition among cosmovisions, Islam's Ummah, or China's Tianxia, or Russia's Third Rome, or America's Covenantal Republic. Each rests on a theological foundation. And every one of those foundations is being fed by demography. So in 2010, Eric Kaufman published what is most likely going to be the single most consequential demographic argument of the 21st century. I've referenced the book numerous times. It's called Shall the Religious Inherit the Earth? And his answer was unequivocally yes. And he argued that as society is industrialized and contraception becomes widely available, values and ideology becomes more important determinants of reproductive behavior. So in the developed world, secular fertility has dropped to its lowest rates ever recorded in human history. In Austria, for example, the secular total fertility rate is 0.86 children per couple. That's not a typo, as it were. But individuals who deliberately reject secular modernity are largely immune to this collapse. In the United States, while non-religious women average about 1.5 children per couple, conservative evangelical women average about 2.5 children per couple. That's a 30% differential. Now, in a society that's evenly split, 50% say conservative evangelical, 50% secular, in a single generation, that 50-50 ends up becoming 60-40. In 2 generations, 75-25. And then in 10 generations, 99-1. You see it with the Amish. There were just 5,000 Amish at the beginning of last century. There's now almost 500,000. Haredi Jews, conservative Jews, same thing in Israel. The Haredis are projected to comprise more than half of Israel's Jewish population by mid-century, even though they were just about 20% or not even 5%, like 2 generations ago. And then what we're finding is that the stricter the religious community, the higher the retention rate. So bottom line, we're finding the stricter the religious community, the more likely children are to retain their religion into adulthood. And what we've been seeing since Kaufman's study is that fertility gap between secular liberals and conservative religious has only widened. Lyman Stone, the demographer, has noted that regular church attenders have around 2 children per couple on average. Non-church attenders have about 1. So that means that for every child born to the irreligious, 2 are born to the devout.
But first, gang, let's face it. You had a number in your head, right? The number you thought would be enough to retire. And then the price of life went up and up and up. And now the question isn't whether you saved, it's whether what you saved can still buy the retirement you plan for. I mean, think about what's happening right now. War flaring up, oil spikes, and then everything gets higher. Gas, groceries, insurance, bills. We've seen this before. We're watching a structural shift in the global economy where inflation isn't temporary, it's embedded. And historically, when that happens, purchasing power doesn't recover. It erodes. Your dollar buys less. Your savings carry less. And people who are counting down to retirement, they start wondering if they got to push it back, all because the cost of living moved the finish line. That was my wake-up call. I knew there had to be something else I could do to protect what I built. So I researched, and that's when I found Augusta Precious Metals. And gang, they taught me things I didn't even know were possible. I had no idea you could move your IRA or 401k into physical gold, tax-free, penalty-free, a real asset that's held its value through war, oil spikes, and market chaos. And that changed everything for me. I've spoken with Augusta's education team. These guys know their stuff and they explain it so clearly. So here's what I recommend you do right now. Go to turleybuysgold.com or text Turley to 35052 to get Augusta's free gold IRA guide. That's turleybuysgold.com or text Turley to 35052 because the retirement you dreamed of is still possible, but only if you protect it.
And here's the civilizational portrait this paints, and Stone noted this. The most religious Americans in 2019 had fertility rates similar to women in India, Libya, Saudi Arabia, Peru, Mexico. The least religious Americans had fertility rates similar to women in Hong Kong or Japan or Italy or Moldova. So 2 nations, right, inside one country, separated not by geography, but by belief, reproducing at rates characteristic of entirely different national context. Now, Kaufman identified one mechanism driving the demographic inversion. That's what he called doctrinal pronatalism, religious conviction commanding reproduction. But the Asian evidence reveals actually 3 distinct forces. And this matters enormously because it means the inversion is overdetermined. Remove one engine and the other 2 carry it. So the first force is the creed, so doctrinal pronatalism, scriptural commands, patriarchal gender norms, the stigmatization of contraception. Afghanistan's Taliban maintain a total fertility rate of about 4.3 to 4.6 through active resistance to family planning. Timor-Leste, it's 97% Catholic. There's still a 3 children per woman. Women who favor Sharia have about twice the fertility of those who oppose it. That's the creedal dimension of religious growth. But there's also what's known as the clan dimension. That's ethnic and civilizational survival. So this fertility is kind of a weapon of identity. So India's RSS, that's their ideological engine of Hindu nationalism. They're calling for 3 children per Hindu family. And they're saying we need to do that in order to civilizationally survive. Mongolia has the Order of Glorious Motherhood, through which the president personally decorates mothers of 4 or more children. Thus, there's been over 200,000 decorated. In Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, native Uzbeks, they have about 2 or 3 times more children than Russian and Ukrainians living in there. So this isn't doctrine, this is identity. It's the conviction that numbers are power. And then the third force is just what's called the soil. And that's the social baseline, lower female education, agricultural societies, very rural societies. They tend to have large families. So the soil doesn't produce ideology, it just amplifies it. And when all three factors converge, as they do, for example, at Timor-Leste or in Hindu nationalist India, fertility doesn't add up, it multiplies dramatically. And so what all of this means is that the data surveyed in full delivers a single verdict, and it arrives at 2 scales simultaneously. Between civilizations, the arithmetic is unambiguous. So the liberal secular world is not losing debate, it's losing a head count. The West was 30% of the world's population at the beginning of the 20th century. Today, that's collapsed to about 10%. So 90% of the world's population is radically religious. So the world is changing between civilizations, and then within civilizations, the realignment is equally decisive, where the most religious members of society are having the most amount of children, while the most irreligious are quickly disappearing off the face of the earth. And what unites all these dynamics, the creed, the clan, and the soil, isn't a single cause. It's more of a single direction. The world's populations are realigning around religious sentiment and communal structure. The communities growing fastest are not the ones that made their peace with liberal modernity. They're the ones that actually refused it. They're the ones that resisted it or deliberately turned their backs on it and walked the other way. So what this means is that the world is getting more and more and more religious, which means that theopolitics, the rise of religion in public policy and international relations, is the unstoppable wave of the future. The age of the gods has returned. The only question now is, what do they intend to build with it? And that's what we're going to be finding out in the rest of our series. Love you guys. God bless.
If this video resonated with you, there's a whole lot more where that came from. The Courageous Patriots Club is where we go deeper. Click the link and step inside.